However, ultimately, the clients nowadays they demand faster delivery of service, and they also demand lower price. So these are changes I see that comes with the use of technology.
Any other panelists wish to discuss with that?
So, if we consider the fundamental as a Qin diet, in this perspective, I don't think that the machine will change the fundamental. Yeah. Because the standard is there. However, it will maybe reshape the industries. And also, we don't need to worry about the data. The translator will disappear. It's bloody. And also, we don't need to worry about the losing jobs. I think because the demand is growing.
I agree with the other two panelists on the fundamental principles in this thing. But in terms of at least in the scope of my work, I see technology playing a role more in terms of availability of reference materials and the speed at which things have been produced, and also the quality because just because more materials are available now. But in terms of technology like computer-assisted translation and machine translation, there's still quite a gap between the technology that's currently available and the work that we're doing right now.
Thank you very much. Again, from the audience, any questions from the audience? Please. So many collaborators now. How does she find the translators to help with such a massive project?
I think I actually missed out this point in my presentation. And in terms of organizing the big team, technology plays a big role. Me and the working committee, which is about 10 people, we only meet once or maximum twice a year in person, but we have a lot of Skype and web conferencing meetings happening almost like a few times a week. So that is how we get in touch with basic tools like emails and GoToMeetings and all that. And also with a lot of file sharing like Dropbox and all these basic tools have helped us to manage the whole big team. More than 100 translators and volunteers. We have also about 100, so it's quite big. Now, how do we find translators? Actually, in 2010, when we first started when we launched our first one cycle, we thought only one team would apply. What we did is we actually have a mailing list. At the time, we started with a mailing list of 12,000 people. Now it has grown to 18,000 people. So we sent out the emails, and we also compiled a list of good translators we know worldwide, and we send them individual emails. And then we published all the information on our website. But surprisingly, we got applications from 21 teams, and some of the teams are huge with sub-teams within. And this has increased in this year. Just last year, we received applications from 24 teams, and they come from really good places all around the world. In terms of Buddhist world, there are like the 4 major traditions in the Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist, and we have great scholars, what we call geishis and temples, participating, and also universities with good academics. So I think it's got around through word of mouth. Generally, we put the information out, and we have very strict criteria. So I think that actually helps. People actually respect what we're doing, and that invites, a lot more academics want to join us. At the same time, we also look out for a really good established team. If we know that they're really good, areas of knowledge or certain genres, we invite them to apply through our website. So that's how we do it. May I also mention that we are also working closely with other organizations, such as TPRC and other universities, to develop the technology collectively in a collaborative manner. So the reading room was built by the developer that we jointly funded. We are also now trying to develop a translators workbench to help, and also to develop a workflow management system. So that will help, hopefully that will help us manage things more efficiently in the future as the team continues to expand.
Thank you very much. Other questions from the audience?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I make a living trying to make people, two different parties, understand each other despite their language differences. And this is what we call in Singapore and in Britain as the interpreter, but the Americans always call us the translators. So now we're looking at an emerging translation model. I'd like to ask maybe our distinguished panelist, Mr. Chu, do you foresee one day where you can have a machine interpreter? Maybe a robot that can partner me in a move, or maybe even replace me?
Actually, I don't think so.
Thank you so much.
It's too challenging. It's too challenging. For the fundamental, the 信达雅. So if the computer they can target to the first two, maybe the ya is most challenging. I don't think it's possible. Yeah, human also is most challenging, most intelligent.
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm actually not here to ask a question, but try to answer Mr. Lee's question. I think it might be possible sometime in the future that a machine translator or a machine interpreter can function to a certain level that is useful for normal communication. Not too long ago, I think Microsoft Vice President or something big shot from the company made a presentation in China, and he had a machine translator, a machine interpreter to partner him. He spoke in English, and the machine interpreter interpreted in Chinese. And not only was the translation quite good, the machine was able to imitate his sound, his voice, and even his intonation. I don't know how much is how much work they done at the background. If it's like if it's spontaneous, I think the result is quite encouraging. Of course, not to us translators, but to those who advocate machine translation. 您有注意到这个消息吗？在中国曾经发生过这个东西，就是不久前 Microsoft 的 Vice President may I speak in Chinese? I'm just repeating what I said just now.
Yes, sorry, sir. Very clear.
Can I just add on to Mr. Yu's comment, and I fully agree with him. Maybe not a machine interpreter per se, that in place of the human interpreter in conference interpreting, the situation conference interpreting or parliament interpreting, but definitely slowly, steps by steps. Some of the interpreters are done by machine. For example, recently I was directed to a YouTube video which showcased a surgery training session by a leading surgeon in USA, trying the video conferencing to surgeons all over the world. And the biggest challenge they have ever encountered is the shot. The video conferencing industry is many countries, but then they say the biggest challenge for them is to find the right interpreter. But one of the leading translation technology service, Lionbridge, has developed a software that is able to convert whatever the doctor said orally into a written form, and then the machine can immediately translate it into a text in the foreign language and then post it on the screen, so the doctor can see it. So in certain extent, to a certain extent, it is the interpreter's job is replaced by a machine, right? But definitely not in those kind of official diplomatic application.
Thank you very much. Questions? Yeah.
I'll just shut up. Could you comment on the legal issues and issues of intellectual property that will arise when you have more machine translation and crowdsourced translation?
Sorry to clarify, but do you mean, for example, if there are mistakes in the translation?
No, who owns the translation? As machine translations get much better or close to usable, even for some literary text or fiction, will there be issues of legality, issues of who owns the translation, if it were a collaborative translation, crowdsourced? Will we come up against issues of IP and things like that? How do you foresee this playing?
This is already an issue, current issue in the online community. In fact, it is a very good question. But for people who is willingly contributing to the online translation, to a certain extent, in some way, they are giving out giving away their intellectual property. Whereas for those online machine translation platform, in fact, they are trying to steal your property, intellectual property, by allowing you, like Google Translators toolkit, they allow you to input your, Google Translators input comes with two components. One is machine translation, the other is that they allow you to input, machine translation output is, the quality is not so satisfactory, right? So they allow, they give you a avenue for you to improve translation, and then when you input this translation, it's your input, and then it was captured in the system, and then converted into data, and then next time when the machine automatically generate another set of output, your property is there. Okay, your intellectual property is there. So this is an issue. But if you are willing, and then now there's a lot of warranty, a lot of the Arab Spring. There are a lot of volunteer interpreters, translators who might be experts in their area, and they are willing to share their knowledge. And this is something that is good about it. But if you are there to make business or make profits, then you have to be cautious in using this kind of a free online machine translation system.
I think these tools providers, they will consider this situation. Maybe they have already prepared a lot of legal documents and ask you to sign before you use it.
Thank you very much. Other questions? We still have a bit of time. Holding your question in your mind. Now's the time for you to ask.
By the way, let me just introduce, this is Mr. Lee, one the famous
notorious
corporate interpreter.
Since we still have a bit of time, I think maybe I should entertain you with more questions or issues or problems, whatever you want to call them. Now, I always believe that I'm an IT idiot. I don't know very much about computers except how to switch it on and switch it off and look for the right site. But the thing is this, I always believe whatever output you want from your work will depend on the input. And how do you ensure that, or ascertain that whatever you input into your system is the correct one? Taking terms of maybe the culture, or the different cultures, or the way certain words are being used in a certain language. So how do you go about ring-fencing in a way that you will not use words which is offensive to the readers of the other languages?
The right question is very hard for machine translation to assess that kind of situation. That's where the human input is important. Yeah, they are definitely not so sensitive to culture and
think no matter how effective your machine is, you still need a human touch. I find that editing. Otherwise, we'll be having more very notes around here.
Yes. Let me give some comments. So I think the words we are speaking, a lot of time they are ambiguous. They are not clear. They are not unique. For example, he saw a man with a pencil. So who with the pencil? This is very ambiguous. But actually, most of our human translators, they will know it because they can do judgment from the context or from the common sense. And it's not very easy for machine translation to get out of these subtle difference unless many years later, I think.
Thank you very much. Other questions? I have anything else from the panel you'd like to say in closing? I have a quick anecdote that I would like to share as long as I have a captive audience. A couple of weeks ago, my office was given a translation job to translate a Japanese website to English. So we went through, we were going through, plodding through each line, each page, and then at one point we forgot to check something. We went back to someone's computer. We said, "Can you check this?" So they entered the website. The English page came up. So no, we want to go back to the original Japanese page. So then checked the URL, typed it again, enter, and then it's in Japanese, and then it switched to English again. Hey, and how did that happen? And we realized that the colleague had set Google Translate for all pages. So every foreign language would be automatically translated into English. So at that point, the office looked, we all spoke to each other and thought, well, shouldn't we didn't realize that this would happen. Should we have checked? Should we have checked the Google Translate page first? And then compare as we do our own translation. And we ultimately decided not to. And even though it might be a good little cheat sheet, we decided to continue to do it fully manually. And then at the end, perhaps, compare. When we compared the end product, of course, the manual one was always so I would like to, as a final question, I would like to ask, do you recommend working with the technology to save time? Surely it would have been faster in this case. Or do you think that the human method, as long as the resources, is preferable? So, you know what we're
Yeah, sorry please. The last word I'm missing.
Preferable. So is it better to do what we decided, to just continue doing completely manually, or should we use the technological tools to give us a hand?
Give up.
Sorry, to give us a hand. Should we use the machine translation first and then check as we do our new translation, or should we just do it completely manually and then afterwards check the machine translation?
Okay, so
For practitioners, what do you recommend?
So I think we have to ask the help from the machine in translations, because this will help us to gain the competitive advantage over our competitors. Yes, it will not help 100%, but only 50% could help a lot for our business to make profit. Yeah, even 20% can help them to gain competitive advantage.
So I would say very valuable.
Let's just add that, as I say, and I always strongly believe that no matter how with the fast development of technology, the position of translators in today's society is changed. Okay, and it is now becoming the end of the bottom of the supply chain. project management in order to and also recruitment of translator in order to provide value add for your clients and also for your employers.
In general, I do agree with the speakers, and I cannot imagine a time when machine translators can replace human ones. Particularly with the work that I'm doing, the scope of the Tripitaka, the Buddha's words. It is very difficult because with things like Google Translate, Google is so rich. They have like the most, I guess they're one of the ones who have the most resources to really develop these tools. But they can't translate. I remember they can't translate the material that we're working on. I remember one time I pasted the Chinese sutra verse onto Google Translate, and it mentioned something about flowers, and then it translated as Air China. So it is, I mean, I have a great respect for technology, and I really think it can really help us improve translation quality across all regions. But at the same time, I think all of us also acknowledge there's limitation, and in very specialized areas, such as what I'm working on, it will take a very long time for the technology to develop. I think technology, from my point of view, from the point of view of my project, I think when we talk about reference materials, technology for reference materials is different from technology for translation itself. In terms of reference materials, it's done huge service for our Tibetan Sanskrit English translations. Just the research, availability of all these data, and then the research and the metadata research that we can do is just amazing. And some of the amazing things that people have done, like some Blue Dot project, maybe you guys can Google it if you haven't heard of it. It's really fascinating, and they help us identify like the cycles and underlying cycles and patterns within the whole genre of the Buddhist canon. So in terms of reference materials, it does help the translators a lot. That said, in terms of the translation work itself, just because there are not so many people who know Tibetan who can contribute to, let's say, Google Translate, and I don't think it's even available on Google Translate Tibetan. So these tools are just not available to us, and it may take a lot of money and time to develop them. So yeah, translation work itself is, as they all have shared, is just so difficult, especially in topics like this. Also, a lot of as we get connected, the whole world gets connected through technology, and as some of the speakers in the previous panel session talked about, I think there is always a struggle between convenience and globalization versus indigenous culture. A lot of our indigenous translators live in the remote mountains, and they just don't have any access to these things. Yet, they are the ones who really who really have the understanding, in-depth knowledge. So I think as we develop technology to aid translation, we must never forget that technology is the servant, and the human mind, the human intellect, human wisdom is actually the brain, the master.
Yeah, I agree with Jingwei. Actually, so the technology is just a servant, but we have to learn how to use them to command them.
It seems like we're not going to go towards that universal translator from Star Trek, I'm afraid. But we had some very useful tips today. We have a general direction of where technology is leading us. And I'd like you to help me thank the panel for sharing their interesting experiences with us. So thank you very much.